Hello everyone, SilverCon Trail here. Today, another article aftermath video, and the third video I've uploaded today. I am so tired. I just want to stop and be done, but today's been pretty crazy, lots of things going on. This morning we had, of course, a little bit of reveals for Primal Origin, some of the stuff that's coming out in that, including the new support, like the new Hazy stuff, the new Madolche stuff, the new Mega Fanabe stuff, Kwakis, Scraps, all those sorts of things. I uploaded a video on my thoughts on that earlier. Really exciting, looking forward to May this year, but that's in a different format, because our format, the one that we're heading into in January, is actually going to last until March 31st. It's not going to last 4 months, not like the last one, and it's not lasting 6 months like all of the other ones before that. So it's kind of interesting. It's pretty neat that we've got these shorter formats. It's also really difficult to figure out what exactly is going on. Okay, so my article right now, and this is kind of what I want to just briefly talk about this real quick. The one that's going up today is mostly about the aftermath of what we do in a world where Dragon Rulers aren't the top deck. No, note what I just said there. Aren't the top deck. That doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they're not this all-powerful force in the format and in competitive play, and everybody isn't running them and everyone isn't topping with them. That's what I'm talking about, very strictly that. So if you look at my article and you say, well, Dragon Rulers aren't dead, you completely missed the point. So hopefully there isn't too much confusion there. I tried to point it out explicitly a couple of times, but maybe I didn't do it well enough. We'll see what happens. I don't have any comments on that yet as I'm recording this. Last week I talked about negating sided cards, and I want to just talk about... I didn't really have any... I didn't really have too many comments on this one, and I'm not sure how many people actually looked at it. Because I think a lot of people, they do look at Typhoon and say, hey, it's Typhoon, that's all I need. If I need to get rid of something that my opponent's siding against me, good enough, right? Maybe. Sometimes. Depends on your deck. Looking into next format, I'm curious to see how decks like Fire Fists are going to stack up if someone flips a skill drain on them. Or even, how Bujins are going to stack up if someone has Light Imprisoning Mirror and you don't have that Typhoon. Are you going to sit there, roll over, and be done? I mean, Bujin really have an issue with that, and they do need Typhoon, like, then and there, to get rid of those cards. Unlike Dragon Rulers, unlike maybe, I guess, Prophecy, to some extent, without mistake, they don't have quick access to an out that just immediately gets rid of something. Dragons had a lot of draw power and then Blaster to get rid of pretty much everything that wasn't Macrocosmos or Dimensional Fissure. And Bujin don't really have that, and 3 Tenki means they're going to be pretty playable. So I'm wondering if they're going to start teching something in. I saw a lot of people running like 7 tools in Geargia in order to kill the trap stun. There was a recent tournament hosted by the Yu-Gi-Oh! Organization, I believe, and there was a guy in there with a Geargia deck, and he actually main decked triple 7 tools just to kill opposing trap stuns, and I thought that was pretty crazy. I really expected those to be bribes, but you don't really have to stomp that many spell cards, and you don't really want to bribe a Typhoon most of the time, because they can potentially draw into another out. And you can also use it against Royal Decree, I guess. But it's interesting to see 7 tools come back in a format where, especially 7 tools coming back actually against decks that aren't exactly running a lot of traps, because specifically you need to stop the cards they're running to kill your traps, which happen to be trap cards. Hey, what do you know? Most of the sided cards right now are traps, so that's why Trap Stun and Royal Decree, and to an extent 7 tools being a counterside to both of those, are really, really good. So, yeah, it's interesting. As far as like Dark Bribe goes, it's going to be a matter of whether or not there are any really potent spell cards out there that need to be stopped, and I would say there aren't that many. In fact, maybe outside of something like Fire King, you don't really need to stop any spell cards because there's nothing that's just going to end the game. You're not really scared of Typhoon, or excuse me, Dark Hole on a lot of the decks that are being played right now, because generally you have outs to those things. Maybe Maybe the one time I could see it is, I guess, against like Evil Swarm, because you can negate their infestation. Pandemic, I believe, and you can Dark Hole, and then they flip their card, and you Dark Bribe, and hey, there goes Ophion. But with that matchup not really being that important either. And I guess that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. There was a third part I wanted to do with this series. I talked about negating sided cards. I wanted to talk about dealing with sided monsters, but I think I'll skip that because the format changed, and there's sort of some things to talk about that next. Again, my article going up today is all about the aftermath of Dragon Rulers. What cards become more popular, what cards become less popular in a format where we have fewer Dragon Rulers, and we'll definitely talk about this in the next article, Aftermath. I'll probably have some gameplay video on that one. Let's see, yeah. There's so much that can change. There's Skill Drain that's suddenly viable. There's Mistake is definitely going to be a big card. And there's a lot of other questions about where to OTK decks, where do the defensive decks, where do those sort of fall in line, which is the more prevalent threat, which one are you going to main deck cards for. Geargia have really good defense, but then they've got a powerful OTK. In fact, to a certain extent, they do feel like a new version of Madolche as far as their OTK goes, or even Dragunity. And they're being popularized because they weren't touched by the list, and of course we've got a format where their probably worst matchup is now gone. They don't have to main deck Imperial Iron Walls to do good in the format anymore. And then you've got on the flip side of that, you've got something like Fire King, which can main deck Skill Drain, or at least side deck Skill Drain, and plays really well against stuff like Geargia, and it kind of prevents them from having that OTK by continuously getting rid of their field, which is a really good, really strong strategy. Debunk is a weird card. It could go up, it could go down. I kind of like it. I never really liked it against Dragon Rulers, so I kind of like it now because it works against a lot of decks, against stuff like Fire Kings. But I think we're going to see a lot of Rivalry of Warlords, because there's a lot of decks that don't really run into that as much. Or there's a lot of decks that can play it, which is good, and then there's a lot of decks that can't play it. So it's going to be important. That's going to be a dividing line, whether or not you can play Rivalry versus whether or not you can't, or whether or not you can play Rivalry is going to be a divider between different decks. Mistake right now is a $17, $18 card. I would definitely recommend picking up at least 2 if you think you're going to definitely play it. The problem with Mistake is, of course, not a whole lot of decks can run it without running into issues on their own. So that's another tough question next format. Which decks can use Mistake the best? And of those decks, how many are worth playing? Can they win matchups off of Mistake alone? Is this going to be like Vanity's Emptiness, where you need to do your special summoning, flip Mistake, and then sit on it? If that's the case, there's a lot of decks that can do that pretty well, and I think we could see a lot from those decks going forward. But right now, search power is everything. Every archetype in this game pretty much does a ton of searching, and even if you don't, you can always tech things like Tenki. So there's that to consider as well. But yeah, it's gonna be crazy next month. The end of basically 7 months of having triple Dragon Rulers, 12 Dragon Rulers down to 4. That's gonna change things. It's not going to completely eliminate the deck, but it definitely is going to change things. And I think if you're going in thinking to yourself, hey, well, Dragon Rulers are going to be good next format, that's fine. But I think if you're going in thinking, hey, Dragon Rulers are going to be the best deck next format, you're kidding yourself, because they're not going to be the best deck. Unfortunately, there's just too many other good decks that are out there right now, and certainly Geargia and Fire King, Fire Fist, Bujin later next month. Yeah, they're going to win against rogue matchups, but they're not going to win against the top decks piloted by the top players. They're going to struggle at championship events, and I'm kind of excited for that first championship that ends with the top 16 or top 32, whatever they cut to, where there are no dragon rulers. Or maybe there's one dragon ruler or something, and you can say, hey, the deck isn't what it was before. And that's really the point going forward, is that the post-Tachyon environment has finally kind of subsided, and we had to lose some decks along the way. We had to kill off Dragonity to do it, but we're finally at that point. And dragons are kind of cool, and they're going to be interesting to watch as we go forward. And I talk about that in my Forbidden List article. It should be coming up soon. The whole concept of dragons as a deck is really interesting. And Amanda did a great article on that as well. Amanda Lapalm on Core TCG. So definitely recommend checking that out too. And yeah, I'm really tired. I think I'm going to call it quits here. If you guys have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments. And have fun playing the new format, I guess, because I think it'd be pretty fun. And yeah, that's it. So until next time then.